Good evening, friends. Today topic is economics of energy conservation or financial management for energy conservation schemes. First topic is introduction. Energy projects are very important to the economy and environment. In case of energy conservation projects, the more the number, the better it's for the environment. It is important to justify any capital investment project by carrying out a financial appraisal. However, the biggest constraint in increasing the number of energy projects is the lack of finance. Alternative finance arrangements can overcome the initial cost obstacle, allowing firms to implement more energy management proposals. However, many energy managers are either unaware or have difficulty in understanding the variety of financial arrangement available to them. Most of the energy managers and auditors use simple payback analysis to evaluate projects, which do not reveal the added value of after tax benefits. Sometimes energy managers do not implement energy management proposals because financial terminology and contractual details intimidate them. The financial issues associated with the capital investment in energy savings projects are investigated in this presentation. Okay, then investment need, appraisal, and criteria. When planning an energy efficiency or energy management project, the investment involved should be considered. The need for investment is energy conservation canaries for installing new equipments, improving processes, and implementing or upgrading energy information systems. Therefore, as with any type of investment, energy management proposals should show the likely return on any capital that is invested. Consider a case of energy auditor or consultant who advise the senior management of an organization that capital should be invested in a new boiler plant. Inevitably, the management of the organization would inquire how much will the proposal cost, how much money will be saved by the proposal. These are the relevant questions as the energy project is only one of many potential projects from which top management may choose only a few to implement. It is the job of senior management to invest capital where it is going to obtain the greater return. Management normally demand higher rate of return from energy projects than core or direct profit making investments. The information on cost involving a project and potential returns is not easily obtained. The capital value of equipment usually decreases with time and it's often require more maintenance as it is get older. If money is borrowed from a bank to finance project, then interest will have to be paid on the loan. Inflation too will influence the value of any future energy savings that might be achieved. It is important that cost appraisal process allows for all these factors with the aim of determining which investment should be undertaken in order to optimize the benefits achieved. To this end of number of accounting and financial appraisal techniques have been developed which help managers make correct and objective decisions. Then financial analysis techniques. In most respective investment in energy efficiency is not different from any other area of financial management. So when the organization first decide to invest in decreasing its energy efficiency, it should apply exactly the same criteria to reduce its energy consumption and as it applies to all its other investments. A faster or more attractive rate of return on investment in energy efficiency should not be demanded. The basic criteria for financial investment appraisal include: first one, payback period is a measure of how long it will be before the investment recovers itself. This can determine how long the financing term need to be there. Then second, net present value and cash flow are measures that allow financial planning of the project taking into account stream of money inflow and outflow over a period of time. These measures provide the company with all the information needed to incorporate energy efficiency project into the corporate financial system. Then third one, return on investment and internal rate of return are measures that allow comparison with other investment options. Next, we will discuss the financial analysis techniques one by one. First one, payback period. The simple techniques which can be used to appraise a proposal is a payback analysis. The payback period can be defined as the time required to recover the initial investment, considering only the annual net savings. Okay, once the payback period has ended, all the project capital cost will have been recovered, and any additional cost saving achieved can be seen as clear profit. The shorter the payback period, the more attractive the project becomes. The length of the maximum permissible payback period is a matter of company choice. Then the formula is simple payback period is equal to capital cost divided by annual net savings. A cogeneration system installation is expected to reduce a company's annual energy bill by rupees 23 lakhs. If the capital cost of the new cogeneration installation is rupees 90 lakhs and annual maintenance and operating costs are rupees 5 lakhs, what will be the expected payback period of the project? Here installation cost of the cogeneration plant is 90 lakhs, which is the capital cost of the project. Then 23 lakhs is a annual energy bill and 5 lakhs is a annual maintenance operating cost. Therefore, simple payback period is equal to capital cost divided by annual net savings, which is 90 divided by 23 lakhs is a saving and 5 lakhs is the operating cost. Therefore, 23 minus 5 equal to 5 years. Within 5 years, we get the profit. After 5 years, we get after the 5 years we get profit. Then advantages of the simple payback period. A widely used investment criterion, the payback period seems to offer the following advantages and following limitations. A main important advantage is it is simple both in concept and application, but limitation is the payback period does not consider saving that are accrued after the payback period has finished. Okay, next method is return on investment. Return on investment, ROE express the annual return expected from a project as a percentage of capital cost or initial investment. ROE is an inverse of payback period. The formula is for your reference. ROE equal to annual net cash flow divided by capital cost into 100. This is expressed as a percentage. In comparing projects, ROI does not require similar project type for capital cost of comparison. ROI must always be higher than cost of money so as to make the project attractive. The greater the return on investment, better is the investment. We see an example. An outlay of rupees 1 lakh for equipment is expected to provide an after-tax cash flow of 25,000 over a period of 6 years without significant annual fluctuation. What is the rate on investment? Average annual operating cash flow is equal to 25,000 divided by outlay amount is equal to 1 lakh. Then rate of investment is equal to 25. Return on investment is equal to 25%. Then advantages of the return on investment is simple method and easy to calculate, and limitation of ROI does not take into account the time value of money. Okay, we go to the next method, time value of money. A project usually entails an investment for the initial cost of installation called the capital cost and a series of annual cost and or cost savings throughout the life of the project. To assess project feasibility, all this present and future cash flow must be equated to a common basis. The problem with the equating cash flow, which occurs at different times is that the value of money changes with time. The method by which these various cash flow are related is called discounting or present value concept. For example, if money can be deposited in the bank at 10% interest, then rupees 100 deposit will be worth as rupees 110 in 1 year's time. Thus, the 110 in 1 year is a future value equivalent to the rupees 100 present value. In the same manner, rupees 100 received 1 year from now is only worth of rupees 90.91 in today's money, that is rupees 90.91 plus 10% interest equals to rupees 100. Thus, rupees 90.91 represent the present value of rupees 100 cash flow occurring 1 year in the future. If the interest rate were something different than 100%, 10%, then the equivalent present value would also change. The relationship between present and future value is determined as follows. future value is equal to net present value into 1 plus I power n, or net present value is equal to future value divided by 1 plus I power n. Here FV is future value and NPV is net present value, I interest rate or discount rate, n number of years. Then we go to the next slide, net present value method. The net present value method considers the time value of money. This is done by equating future cash flow to its current value today, or in other words, by determining the present value of any future cash flow. The present value is determined by using an assumed interest rate, usually referred to as discount rate. Discounting is the opposite process to compounding. Compounding determines the future value of present cash flows, whereas discounting determines the present value of future cash flows. Okay, the net present value method calculates the present value of all the yearly cash flows incurred or occurred throughout the life of project and summates them. As a matter of convention, costs are represented as negative values and savings as positive values. The sum of all the present value is known as the net present value. The higher the net present value, the more attractive is the proposed project. The net present value of project is equal to the sum of the present value of all the cash flows associated with it. Symbolically, NPV is equal to minus CF naught, this, where NPV is equal to net present value and CFT is cash flow occurring at the end of year T. As per our convention, net savings inflows are represented by plus sign and net cost or outflows or maintenance are represented by negative sign. Since capital investment is an outflow, it will be treated as negative as per our convention. N is the life of the project and K is discount rate. Accept the project if the NPV is positive. And then we discuss on problem. Using the net present value analysis technique, evaluate the financial merits of two proposed projects shown in the table. The annual discount rate is 8% for each project. Here they shown two type of projects, which is project 1 and project 2. The worth of the capital cost is 30,000 for project 1 and 30,000 for project 2. Both are same capital, both are having same capital cost, but yearly annual savings is different. The table shown for 10 years. For project 1, for 10 years the saving is 6,000 per year, but in project 2 the amount is varying. The total net savings at the end of 10th year is equal to is also same 60,000 and 60,000. Okay, for the project 1 net present value, using the above formula, the net present value is 10,254 for project 1, and for project 2 using this similar formula, the net present value is 1,867. For a 10-year lifespan, the net present value for project 1 is rupees 10,254, while project 2 is rupees 10,867. Therefore, project 2 is preferential proposal. The whole creditability of the net present value depends on a realistic prediction of discount rate, which could often be unpredictable. It is prudent to set the discount rate slightly above the interest rate at which the capital for the project is borrowed. Here the initial capital cost and annual net savings for 10 years both are same, and also but difference is net present value for two projects. Project 1 the net present value is lower than the project 2, therefore the project 2 we can take for our proposal. Okay, then next method, internal rate of return. By setting the net present value of an investment to 0, the minimum value that would make the investment worthwhile, the discount rate can be computed. The internal rate of return of a project is a discount rate, which makes its net present value equal to 0. It is discount rate in the equation. Then CFT value will be negative if it is expenditure and positive if it is saving. If the discount rate is greater than current interest rate, the investment is sound. This procedure, like net present value, can also be used to compare alternatives. The criterion for selection among alternatives is to choose the investment with a higher rate of return. The calculation procedure of determining IRR is tedious and usually requires a computer spreadsheet. The IRR function formula is available in Excel and can be used in practice. However, it is important to get acquainted with the fundamental procedure of determining the IRR. Determining IRR is an iterative process requiring guesses and approximation until a satisfactory answer is derived. Then we saw another example for IRR. A proposed project requires an initial capital investment rupees 20,000. The cash flow generated by the project are shown in the table below. Here investment 20,000, savings in year is tabulated below. The cost of capital K for the firm is 8%. Discount rate is 8%. We have to find the internal rate return, which is slightly more than discount rate. Then only the project is worthable. Okay, go to the problem. The net present value of the first we calculate the net present value of the proposal. The net present value is 2791. Then the discount rate has to be increased to bring NPV to 0. Increase the discount rate to 12%. Then repeat the calculation. We get the net present value as 495. Then further increase the discount rate to 16%. The net present value is minus 1508.5. This is iterative procedure to calculate the discount rate. Therefore, for 16% interest we get minus 1508.5. For 12% interest we get 495. Therefore, that net present value will be is equal to 0. It lies in between the 12% and 16% discount rates. Then a discount rate of 13%, net present value is minus 65. It can be clearly seen that the discount rate which result in the net present value being 0 lies somewhere between 12% and 13%. It is closer to 13%. Then the exact internal rate of return can be found by interpolation or plotting the net present value on a graph. By interpolation method, NPV at 13% is minus 65, NPV at 12% is 495, then IRR is equal to the following formula, then calculate the IRR, we get 12.88%. Then also we find the IRR with the help of graphical method and plot the x-axis as a discount rate and plot the y-axis as a net present value and plot the values. Then we get the IRR at the net present value is equal to 0. Therefore, we get 12.88% from the graph also. Then advantage of IRR method is the power it takes into account the time value of money. It considers the cash flow stream in its entire entity. Then limitation of the IRR is the internal rate of return figure cannot distinguish between lending and borrowing, and hence the higher internal rate of return need not necessarily be desirable feature. The next topic is cash flow. To judge the attractiveness of any investment, we must consider the following 4 elements involved in the decision. The first one is initial capital cost or net investment. When companies spend money, the outlay of cash can be broadly categorized into one of 2 classifications: expenses or capital investments. Expenses are generally those cash expenditures that are routine, ongoing, and necessary for the ordinary operation of business. Capital investments, on the other hand, are generally more strategic and having long-term effects. Decisions made regarding capital investments are usually made by senior management and carry with them additional tax consequences as compared to expenses. The capital investment usually requires a relatively large initial cost. The initial cost may occur as a single expenditure or occur over a period of several years. Generally, the funds available for capital investment projects are limited. Initial capital costs include all costs associated with preparing the investment for service. This includes purchase cost as well as installation and preparation cost. Initial costs are usually non-recurring during the life of an investment. The next, net operating cash inflows. The benefits resulting from the initial cost for a capital investment occur in the future, normally over a period of life. As a rule, the cash flows which occur during a year are generally summed and regarded as a single end of year cash flow. Annual expenses and revenues are the recurring cost and benefits generated through the life of the investment after adjusting the applicable taxes and effects of the depreciation. Periodic replacement and maintenance costs are similar to annual expenses, except they do not occur annually. Then, third, economic life. The period between initial cost and last future cash flow is the life cycle or life of an investment. Then, fourth, salvage value. The salvage value of an investment is the revenue attributed to disposing of the investment at the end of the useful life. If substantial recovery of capital from eventually disposal of asset at the end of economic life, these estimated amounts have to be made part of analysis. Such recoveries can be proceeded from sale of facilities and equipment as well as the release of any working capital associated with the investment. Then financial options. Capital investing requires a source of funds. For large companies, multiple sources may be employed. This process of obtaining funds or capital investment is called financing. The various conventional financing options are debit financing, equity financing, retained earnings, capital lease, true lease, and energy performance contracting. The first one is debit financing. The debit financing involves borrowing and utilizing money which is to be repaid at a later point in time. Interest is paid to the lending party for the privilege of using the money. The company owns the equipment and this arrangement is good for long term use of equipment. The borrower is simply obligated to repay the borrowed funds plus accrued interest according to a repayment schedule. Car loans and mortgage loans are two examples of this type of financing. Then equity financing. Under equity financing, the lender acquires on ownership position within the borrower's organization. As a result of this ownership position, the lender has to right to participate in the financial success of an organization as a whole. The two primary sources of equity financing are stocks and retained earnings. The cost of capital for stocks is higher than the cost of capital for the debit financing. After from higher profit sharing, this is also partially attributable to the fact that interest payment are tax deductible with while stock dividend payment are not. Then third, retaining earnings. Retained earnings. Retained earnings are the accumulation of annual energy surplus that the company retained with the company's coffers rather than paying out to the stockholders or dividends. Although these earnings are held by the company, they truly belong to the stockholders and hence the same cost of capital for stock is applied. Then another financing option is capital lease. Capital lease allows for lower cost of capital with third party participation. It is a midway between pure debit and pure equity financing. Then other financing option is true lease. True lease allows use of equipment without ownership risks, offer reduced risk of poor performance, service equipment obsolescence, and is particularly suitable for short-term use of equipment. Lease payments are tax deductible, no depreciation tax benefits are available, and ownership does not occur even at the end of lease period. If the project is to be financed extremely, one of the attractive option for many organizations is the use of energy performance contracts delivered by energy service companies or ESCOs. Is the last finance option. The ESCOs are usually companies that provide a complete energy project service from assessment to design to construction or installation along with engineering and project management service and financing. These are the topics for the second lecture, and we then finally we have to solve one tutorial problem. Under the case, the problem is an oil fired reheating furnace heats steel billets from 40 degrees Celsius to 1220 degrees Celsius at a furnace efficiency of 28%. The furnace operates for 4700 hours per annum. The gross calorific value of furnace oil is 10,000 kilocalories per kg and density of 0.94 kg per liters. The cost of furnace oil is rupees 45 per liter. The specific heat of billet is 0.12 kilocalorie per kg degree Celsius. Then calculate the amount of energy necessary to heat 12 tons of steel billets per hour. Calculate liters of furnace oil fired per tons of steel billets. If the efficiency of the furnace is improved from 28% to 30% by adopting ceramic fiber insulation, calculate the hourly finance oil cost saving. What is the simple payback period if the investment is rupees 20 lakhs? How long could be investment to improve the efficiency at an internal rate of 16% and per year over 6 years? This is the problem. Here an oil fire reheating furnace used to heat the steel billets from 40 degrees Celsius to 1200 degrees Celsius and the furnace efficiency is 28%. Then the working hours of furnace is 4000 hours per annum. Then the calorific value of oil, furnace oil is 10,000 kilocalories per kg. Here we use in kilocalories, not kilojoules. Okay, then the density is in terms of kilogram per liters, which is equal to 0.94, and the cost of furnace oil is 45 per hour, 45 per liter, and the material specific heat also given. Then we have to proceed the problem. First, amount of energy necessary to heat 12 tons of steel billets. This is equal to mCp del T. M is mass of steel billets, Cp is specific heat of billets, and T is temperature difference. Here 12 tons, therefore 12,000 kgs, and 0.12 is a specific heat, and the temperature is 1220, 1220 and 40 degree. Therefore we get this much amount of energy per hour. Then liters of furnace oil fired per ton of steel billets. We have 1699200 kilocalories per hour, with the amount of heat which is used to heat 12 tons of billets. Therefore we have to calculate for 1 ton. Then we get 1,41,600 kilocalories per ton of steel billets. Then input energy per ton of billets is equal to the 0.28 is the efficiency of the furnace. Therefore the input of the furnace is 505714 kilocalorie per ton of billet. Therefore furnace oil required is, this is total amount of energy. Then we have the calorific value of furnace oil divided by the total, this input energy is divided by the calorific value. Then we get 50.57 kg per ton of billet. Then furnace oil required in liters, we have 50 the value divided by the density of the fuel. Therefore we get 53.79 liters per ton of steel billets. Okay, then the hourly furnace oil cost savings. The hourly furnace oil cost savings per ton. The per ton we have 53.7 liters of furnace oil required. The price for the 1 liter furnace oil is 45 rupees. Therefore we get rupees 161.37 per ton. Then hourly oil cost savings for 12 tons is 1936 per hour. Is hourly savings. Then simple payback period at 4,700 hours of operation. The investment is 20 lakhs. Therefore the hourly savings is 1936. Then for 4,700 hours we multiplied with 1936, and the simple payback period is 20 lakhs divided by 1936 into 4,700 hours. Therefore we get 0.352 years or 4.2 months. Then net cash inflow per annum for the internal rate of return 80% and for 6 years. Then using the previously known formula, we get 3.35 crores. 3.35 crores. From that, and 91 lakhs is a annual savings. Therefore investment is equal to 91 plus 1 by 1.16. This is a series for 6 years. Then we get investment is equal to rupees 3.35 crores. This is the tutorial problem for your reference. Then thank you.